Well, it's a real privilege to be with you this morning, and we want to thank Dr. Wood for allowing us to be here today and share with you. 30 years ago, we were at School of Missions. We're commissioned to go out on the mission field full time, and we had an idea of what that would entail. We were going to spend our life serving God on the mission field.
In fact, we were going to be missionaries in a primitive area. We went to the Solomon Islands, and our heart's desire was just to share with those people who had not heard about the gospel.
But how many know sometimes we get unexpected detours? Life doesn't always go the way we expect it to, and yet as we look back through the years, we know God is never caught off guard. Our part is to trust in times when we really don't understand. 5 years ago, I was pastoring a church, been there 9 years, and God spoke very clearly to my heart, and he said, my church is full of unforgiveness. They've been deceived into believing they can be wrong with each other and still be right with me. It's time to resign the church, go on the road and begin to tell your story and teach my people what you've learned about forgiveness. So for the past 5.5 years, Sherry and I have been traveling across the nation and to many countries of the world sharing this story and teaching what we've learned about forgiveness.
So briefly today we're going to tell you a story, and we're going to start in Palau. We transferred from the Solomon Islands to Palau in mid-1986. Our children then, our little girl was 11, our son had just turned 12 when we arrived, and we had big plans for this nation. You see, it was a pioneer work, and we were replacing a missionary who had been there just 3.5 years.
It's quite a change transferring from the Solomon Islands in the South Pacific into the Mid-Pacific, from a larger country of several 100,000 people to a nation of only 12,000 people.
In fact, Palau had only 5 inhabited islands. What a tiny nation, and they had their own language.
And the island we lived on was the largest of the islands, not the most inhabited. It's interesting, we were the only white people living on the island. We lived on the outside of a village area. The house was built by Randy Carlson. He'd been there just 3 years as the first missionary there. They were promised electricity, but when electricity finally came, nobody'd pay their bill. So we had electricity a few hours in the morning and a few hours every evening.
So our life was very complicated with all electric appliances, and so we were constantly juggling. Another complication in our life, there was no telephone service on that island.
Our kids went back to the States while we made the transfer, and we thought they'd join us about the time we got house set up, but only one plane a week coming in. It was 6 weeks before we found a place on the plane for the kids to arrive. So 6 weeks after we got there, our children joined us.
And a friend of ours brought the kids. It was still quite a trip for them to come to Palau. The only route in at that point, well, there were 2 routes, but the easiest route was to fly to Hawaii and then to Guam and on into Palau.
So we were excited to have our kids. Jenny flew back home on a Thursday night, and we've been praying with our kids through the weeks that they were with us, the 3 weeks. God, whatever it takes to reach this nation, we are here to serve you. One night after the power went out, it was a Friday night, actually the night after the lady that brought the kids out flew home. The dogs woke me up barking. I slipped downstairs in the darkness to open the door to quiet the dogs. I was hit in the face with a bottle, immediately closing the door and locking it. Windows began to break. I quickly moved my kids upstairs, went back into the kitchen area as 2 men broke through the back door of the house. I went from a dead sleep to a fight for my life in a matter of minutes. In the moments that followed, I was severely beaten. I was stabbed in the side, eventually hit over the head with a shotgun, swung like a ball bat that literally picked me up and knocked me to the floor. Got in between the attackers and my family one more time until they beat me to a point I couldn't lift my head. They dragged me to the laundry room and put a gun to my head and said, if you move, you will die. All I could do was pray.
2 of the men then came upstairs and began beating me and demanding money. They'd pull me by my hair and kick me to the floor.